this session, I want to talk about the problem of the day. Have you ever had anyone come into your office and say, "I've got this problem. I can't solve this problem. I have this problem." And as a owner or a manager or a supervisor, the first thing you want to do is what? Spout out the answer, right? You just want, "I got the answer to that one." And some people mistakenly think that this makes them look like a good boss if they have all the answers to everything. Well, actually, the opposite is quite true. It's not so much what you know, it's where to find the answer. But in this particular session, I want to talk more about our responsibility as managers and owners to grow our people. In other words, maybe the correct way to say this is, "I understand you have a problem. What do you think we should do about it? How would you handle this problem?" And let's see how they come up with a solution, or if they can come up with a solution. And then coach them. Say, "Well, that sounds pretty good. Why don't we try that?" Or maybe give them a little bit of advice on how to handle it. But don't just jump in right away with the answer and say, "This is it." I know of a gentleman who has told me many times that as a president or a vice president of his company, he has the responsibility to know everything when people walk in the door. And he's supposed to give the answer. And he and I have had that discussion for many, many years. That I disagree with him because I said, how do our people ever grow? How do your people ever grow if all you do is give them answers? And then in the same breath, many times we talk about we don't have anybody to take on new business. As a matter of fact, have you recently taken on a new account, for instance, maybe, and you said, "I don't know where I'm going to find the help for this job"? I hear that all the time. "I'd like to take on more business. Business is bad, and I'd like to take on more business, but I don't have a supervisor or manager to do it." And my answer or my response usually is, whose fault is that? Have you taken the time to develop the managers and supervisors that you need to grow your company? Let me give you an example of something that happened to me personally, very embarrassing to me. Several years ago, I was a finalist, one of the 3 finalists in a large, at least for my company, was a very large, about 750,000 square foot office facility. And part of the prospects' decision-making process was they wanted to interview the manager that we would have, or the site manager that we would have in charge of the facility. And to tell you the truth, I didn't have anybody. And I took a gentleman, and they interviewed him, and I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed that he was not prepared. He really didn't have the answers, and that taught me a lesson. And after that, I went home. We started deciding to have quarterly managers meetings. And we called our managers in from all over the country where we operated for every quarter, and their assistants if they had one, because that was what we were trying to do, is develop the managers. Now, if I asked the managers, "Who do you have that could take your job?" they of course would tell me nobody. Because why? Because if I take that somebody, they then have to train somebody else, and they didn't want to do that. So that meant myself and my top managers had to get into the field, find out who's out there that we are impressed with, then we would personally invite those people. "We'd like you to come to the quarterly managers meeting." And we started aggressively developing managers so that we had people in the stable, so to speak, that could take over new facilities as we added them. I let that embarrassment happen one time, and it never happened to me again, because I did not get that account, as you could imagine. As I learned that later, we were just going through the exercise because they'd already made a decision on who they wanted, and it was a national contract, But the fact remains that it was a good learning lesson for me. And that was, I was not developing managers the way I should. I was answering the questions right quickly so that I could look like a good manager, but I wasn't helping them grow. You know, my philosophy is sometimes it's okay to let them make a mistake. If it doesn't affect the overall direction of your organization, let them make that mistake and then help them dig their way out of it so that they learn. Did you learn from this error? Did you learn from this mistake? And if they repeat the mistake, you probably don't have a person that ought to be a manager. If they've learned from it, they're growing from it, and you may have a potential future manager. So, how about it? Are you helping your people grow? Are you helping them to develop in great team members for your organization? You know, your organization will be much better for it if you do. So maybe you shouldn't come up with all the answers immediately when somebody comes in and says, I have a problem today. Listen to the problem and let them solve it, or help them solve it. And the other thing I want to point out is maybe you ought to be developing some quarterly meetings with some people, with your managers and your next level managers, and have real management meetings, not lectures by you, but real growing opportunities for everyone in your organization.